He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Greetings, YouTubers, and welcome to the newest installment of Supervillains Explored. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Green Lantern villain Black Hand, who's also known as William Hand. Now, Black Hand has a couple of different origins within the DC universe. His original origin is that his real name is William Hand, and he was a member of a wealthy family who pretty much hated and despised him, and he was pretty much the black sheep of the family. So he decided that simply despite his whole family and everybody else, we're soon shown that he's a genius inventor. He's very good at it and inventing things, so he sort of uses this to pretty much go on a long life of crime, and he names himself Black Hand as sort of like a running joke, seeing as how he's the black sheep of his family. Of course, nobody else gets this except him, and he would be a very cunning enemy for the Green Lantern Hal Jordan, because he actually develops a gadget that acts as sort of like a substitute power ring, I guess you could say. Because this special device that William Hand created is it picks up the residue from Jordan's Green Lantern ring, and he can use that residue as a power source for Hand's own device that he can use as pretty much a sort of Green Lantern ring of his own. And that's one of the things that made him a very formidable opponent to Hal Jordan. So, Black Hand would be one of the many recurring Green Lantern villains over the ages. There were many different encounters that he had with Hal Jordan. There was actually one thing in the Jeff Johns storyline, Green Lantern Rebirth. Black Hand actually tries to steal a power ring. This is the storyline where Hal Jordan becomes the Spectre. And, of course, one thing a lot of people don't know is that Hal Jordan and Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow, are actually friends. And Jordan, early on, he lends Queen an extra spare power ring that Queen can use. And he instructs Queen how to use the power ring. Not as good as a Green Lantern, but when Hand discovers this, he figures that if he can steal this power ring, then he would have an unlimited source of energy for his device. However, both Green Arrow and the Spectre, who is actually Hal Jordan, they both catch him, and Green Arrow fires an arrow that pins his hand to the wall. And not only that, but the Spectre turns his hand into fragile coal, and he says, "Now you can live up to your name fully." And that sort of and his hand literally becomes black with coal, and it breaks off very easily, and he's left with only one hand. Later on in Black Hand's life, he would be experimented on by aliens, and he would be given all sorts of really weird cybernetic enhancements and whatnot. That's Black Hand's first origin. In the DC Comics event Infinite Crisis, Black Hand's origin was completely revised again. It was completely changed around, seeing as how all these different crisis events that happen, they really tend to shake up the DC continuity to a whole bunch, and a lot of characters end up having slightly different origins than they did before. Yeah, but Black Hand's family actually works at a funeral home, and William Hand develops a love of dead bodies. Yes, the current Black Hand in the comics is a hardcore necrophiliac. He loves dead bodies. He loves to kill animals and stuff them just to look at their corpses. And my God, is this guy fucking disturbing as hell. And plus, he's the main perpetrator behind the whole Blackest Night event. I'll explain that in a little bit. But yeah, he decides that, and he wants to become a costume supervillain based on his love of dead bodies and stuff. So he develops a really sinister black costume that he sort of engraved with his family emblem, in which that would go on to later become the emblem for the Black Lanterns. Now, how he actually creates the Black Lanterns is sort of an interesting story. This alien named Atrocitus comes down, and for those of you who don't know, Atrocitus is another Green Lantern villain, or more so, he's an enemy of the Guardians of the Universe, who are the mentors to the Green Lanterns. Atrocitus, he sort of accidentally leaves behind a device after a battle with the Green Lanterns. Black Hand finds this device, and he decides to use this device as a new weapon for him to use. And that would be his new weapon that he would use as sort of the replacement for his original Silver Age counterpart. How he creates the Black Lanterns is that the renegade evil guardian known as Scar, who actually shows up and gives him the precise instructions on how to obtain the power of a Black Lantern. So he goes to Batman's grave. This was after Batman had died, and he recites the Black Lantern Oath. And when he does that, he digs up Batman's skeletal remains, and he God, this is so gross. He licks Batman's skull. How fucking gross is that? But yeah, and that's sort of how the whole Blackest Night event occurs, because he basically whispers to the spirit of death, and this creates like a gigantic zombie paradox within the DC universe. All the dead DC characters come back to life as zombie villains known as Black Lanterns. And that's pretty much how the whole Blackest Night event happens. Is that Black Hand is the guy who triggers it all. He sort of causes like a domino effect. But to be perfectly honest, I kind of prefer the modern day incarnation of Black Hand. I like the old version of Black Hand. You know, I think he's kind of an interesting character, but I don't know how they decided how the writers decided to make him a necrophiliac. I don't know what was going through their minds, but God, it's so hard for me to read any of those Blackest Night comics simply because I just don't want to see Hand and freaking pleasuring himself to pictures of dead bodies. This is definitely one of the most disturbing villains I've ever heard of. And by the way, this video is me honoring the request of Ziploc Gory. So, yeah, that's all the DC villains I plan to do for a little while. Right now, I'm fixing to start on my Marvel villains list. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be the Supervillains Explored Masters of Evil Marathon. So be on the lookout for that.